All right, good afternoon to you. It's 5:07 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, we've got some of the audio from these Senate confirmation hearings today. We'll share some of the wild moments with you, the revealing moments with you. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Recovery efforts continue in the wake of that horrific crash last night between American Eagle Flight 5342 and an Army Black Hawk helicopter just to the east of Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. Hundreds of first responders spending all night last night and now all day today trying to, at first, conduct a search and rescue, now conducting recovery efforts to pull bodies from the very cold water. A lot of horrible stories coming out. We'll learn more about the human tragedy here in the days ahead. There are some stories that ABC reports that 14 figure skaters are among the victims on that D.C. plane crash, including apparently children who were coming back from that Wichita, Kansas flight into DCA last night. And just tragic all around as entire families were on board that plane and have perished. And our community left picking up the pieces, friends who know some of the effect of some of the killed and these families. My heart goes out to all of you, and I know my family. We're praying so fervently for all of you as you go through this tragedy. None of this should have happened. The wake of it, as I mentioned, right now involves a recovery effort. Right now, according to authorities, 28 bodies have been pulled from the river out of the 67 people who are believed to have perished last night. This effort, again, continues at this hour. For more on all of this, I want to bring in our friend Hung Cao. He's a retired Navy captain and a former U.S. Senate candidate, of course. Captain Cao, it's always good to talk to you. Good to have you back on the show, sir.
Thank you, Vince. I'm sorry it's under these conditions here.
And, and one of the reasons why I am interested in speaking with you specifically is because you have been a part of these salvage efforts in the wake of a plane crash. In fact, I was reminded that you were a part of recovering what was left of the pieces of the John F. Kennedy Jr. plane crash now many years ago, weren't you?
Yes, that and amongst other aircraft too. I mean, I recovered a lot of military aircrafts and commercial airlines too. It was terrible. I mean, it's always terrible, and you want to bring comfort to the family,
yes,
or just closure.
Yes, that's for sure. Give us your sense of what this recovery effort must be like for the guys who are out there right now.
Yeah, so we're in 37 degrees water. So right now it's like, do you wear dry suits? You can't, because it's a lot of jagged metal that will cut through a dry suit. So you'll probably wear a 7mm wetsuit with chafing gear. That's what that's what we used to do for aircraft recovery. And the first thing is to recover, obviously, the black box first, and then the victims, because you don't want to, when you pull up the plane, to have, you've got to protect their dignity also. So we want to recover all the bodies, and it's a tough thing too. You usually double bag them. You cut drainage holes in there, but you put in double bags just so nothing else comes out also. I mean, I'm not trying to be gruesome. I'm just letting you know that this is the art of having to do that kind of stuff. It's hard. And underwater, I mean, people think, oh, it's only 7 feet, but you can get embolized. 7 feet is very, very dangerous, because the arterial gas embolism, you just pop up really fast, and then next you know, this air bubble goes to your brain. So these are fears we have also. And my fear also is for the divers. There's a lot of things that you have to do in terms of worry about their sanity afterwards. We have so many suicides in the military after young men and women are seeing things that they're not used to seeing.
Yes.
So that's the body recovered part. And then the salvage part, I would say what I would do if I was the supervisor of diving and salvage for this would be floating in some barges and then a crane on a barge so that you can start lifting it up. I think the helicopter is upside down, so you can probably open the doors, put a sling in there, and pull the helicopter out first, and then the fuselage from the planes. And then, I mean, there's a lot of other pieces and parts too. People think it's just two pieces, but when a plane goes into the water, it just breaks apart. And we've got to recover everything because there's an investigation.
How difficult or easy is it to get an image of what's under the water? I mean, when you actually want to establish, okay, what does the terrain look like here? We were listening this morning to local officials describing, EMS officials describing the debris field. And they say it ran from right there next to Reagan National all the way down to the Wilson Bridge because obviously there are currents. The water was moving last night, and a lot of what was and much of it was carried about a mile away to the Woodrow Wilson Bridge. How do getting a picture of what is underwater there, and that water, as you mentioned, relatively shallow, I guess, 6 to 7 feet in some places.
Yes.
Other places waist deep. They're saying so. It varies there in the Potomac River. Is it possible to get a clean picture, or is it going to be a while before we know exactly where everything is?
Yeah, it's going to be a while because there's a lot of fuel and oil in the water right now too. So that's another thing you have to worry about, the exposure of your divers to that kind of stuff as well. But the debris field just gets spread around, especially with current pulling things across the Potomac River. So it's just tough. I mean, you can probably use a little handheld sonar, but some things just don't ping off. We have handheld sonars that we can put onto our divers so they can find pieces of parts. But let's take care of the big pieces first. Then we have to find the other small pieces, and
Yes.
of course, you've got to pull up all the personal belongings too.
How hard is this with the water temperature being as low as it is right now?
Oh yeah, 37 degrees is hard. Exposure to the guys, and people won't think about it. There's a lot of things that happen. I mean, it's not. I wouldn't consider this like ice diving. Ice diving is a lot different too because, there's something that happens to your face when you've got cold water hits your face. It's an automatic response for your body to stop breathing. That's why you hear stories of kids falling through the ice, and they would get recovered 20 minutes later. They're still alive because your body just automatically shuts down and it doesn't allow for air to come in. It's actually very hard to force yourself to breathe once cold water hits your face. So we usually wear full face masks for these operations.
And then, I'm hoping, it sounds like the authorities are saying that they're not stopping until they recover everything, which is good to hear. But these are a lot of people here that we're talking about, a lot of bodies to recover. 67, they say, across both of these aircraft. 28 bodies as of this afternoon recovered. These guys, you expect will be out there until every body's recovered?
Yes, at the very least, we've got to recover all the bodies because it gets deteriorated after. I mean, it's almost been 24 hours. A lot of things happen to the body after it's been exposed to water in 24 hours, and so as you go on, it just gets worse and worse. So again, it's the dignity of the person. It's to bring closure to the families, and it's also a biological hazard also for the area.
Yeah. And then finally, you kind of mentioned it, but I just want to go back to it because I'm really impressed by the guys who do this. This is big for those guys. The guys who are out there in terms of just the personal impact it must have on them. Not everybody in their career, thank goodness, encounters a dead body or an incident like this. But this is a real crisis. A lot of great people responding to it. My guess is many of them haven't slept since the crash occurred last night. What is this all like for them right now?
Oh yeah, their adrenaline's going, and at some point they're going to crash. And so, as the on-scene commander needs to keep an eye on that to make sure that you're cycling people through, let them rest, because everybody wants to go until the mission's done. But this is going to take a while, and so we need to make sure that they're okay. But also, when you're doing this kind of stuff, you're concentrating on just your hands, right? Because you don't want to look around. You want to just concentrate on your hands. But it's what happens after the mission's over, after you close your eyes and go to bed, and it's the images that haunt you. I mean, trust me, I've done a lot of these plane recoveries, and it's just hard. It's hard on your psyche.
All right. Well, Hung Cao, I'm really grateful that you joined us on this topic. Another topic I'd like to discuss with you, because I know you have an interest in this. It matters so much to our country, is the intelligence community. Today, Tulsi Gabbard being considered by the United States Senate to become the director of national intelligence, meeting a lot of resistance, especially from the Democrats on that committee who really despise her, hate her. What do you make of Tulsi Gabbard and the president's decision to ask her to take this role?
I mean, I don't know her very well. I mean, I sat in back of a car with her when President Trump and I went to Arlington National Cemetery, then to Eden Center. So I sat in back and we talked for a while. But you know what? I know Mike Waltz very well. And if Mike trusts her, and I trust her, but, especially if President Trump trusts her, then I trust her as well. We need people in their jobs right now. I mean, imagine if we didn't have Pete Hegseth and Sean Duffy and Kristi Noem last night in their jobs.
Yes.
I mean, you would have people that are acting that are too scared to make a decision because they're not used to it. Whereas these guys are saying, "Hey, the buck's on me. I'll make the decision. Let's do it." I mean, Kristi Noem's like, "Hey, we're going to get the Coast Guard out there right away." And so likewise with Tulsi Gabbard, there is a threat to the United States right now. We need a DNI right now so that we can make sure we know what the enemy is up to.
Yes. Yeah, no, like last night is a perfect example. I mean, real life continues, and we need good leaders in place immediately to deal with the consequences of all of that. Tulsi Gabbard being asked to be the director of national intelligence. That's the primary conduit between the intelligence community and the president of the United States. We have an intel community that's been very famously out of control. Hung Cao, you talked about this during your Senate campaign as well. How much power does the director of national intelligence have to bring them to heel?
Oh, she has a lot. I mean, she's basically the president's direct representative. She'll be working with Director Radcliffe. She'll be working with DIA and ONI and all the and NRO, all the government agencies. She's basically the president's representative, and she will work directly with Mike Waltz also to protect our country.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna get to some audio coming up here from this Tulsi Gabbard hearing. In the meantime, I'm going to bid you farewell. Hung Cao, retired Navy captain, former U.S. Senate candidate. Thank you very much, as always, for your service to the country and your wisdom on all these subjects today.
Thank you, Vince.
All right. There he is, Hung Cao. In a moment, more of the Tulsi Gabbard hearing. I'll share some audio with you. From that, we have Kash Patel had a lot of great moments today too. I've already played some audio, but I've got more as he's considered for FBI director, and he mixed it up with old pencil neck Adam Schiff. Honestly, there are so many great things, and they're all ahead. I'm going to share them with you now. Okay, remember, the Democrats in the Senate were making a big deal out of the fact that Kash Patel at one point, as a joke, had launched a watermelon with Adam Schiff's head on it out of a trebuchet towards a children's castle, I think. It was really funny at the time. Democrats hate it. They accused him of actually launching a sitting United States senator because they have no idea what they're talking about. But here it is. Forget a metaphor. It happened in real life today. Kash Patel launching Adam Schiff. Okay, it's another metaphor, but they're together fighting with each other. Take a listen.
I want you to turn around. There are Capitol Police officers behind you. They're guarding us. Take a look at them right now. Turn around.
I'm looking at you. You're talking to me.
No, look at them. I want you to look at them if you can, if you have the courage to look them in the eye, Mr. Patel, and tell them you're proud of what you did. Tell them you're proud that you raised money off of people that assaulted their colleagues, that pepper sprayed them, that beat them with poles. Tell them you're proud of what you did, Mr. Patel. They're right there. They're guarding you today. Tell them how proud you are.
That's an abject lie, and you know it. I've never, ever accepted violence against law enforcement. I've worked with these men and women, as you know,
you
my entire
glorified
life,
it in song,
and I did
Mr.
not
Patel.
make a single dime out of it.
In song. Well, let me.
How about you ask them if I have their backs, and let's see about that answer.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Patel. Let me ask you this.
I just love this.
If an FBI director promoted a song of people who sprayed pepper spray in the face of an FBI agent, would you say they were fit to be director?
Mr. Schiff?
Yes or no? Would they be fit to be director?
I am fit to be the director of the FBI.
If you were the FBI director and you promoted a song with someone who beat an FBI agent.
What was the song, by the way? Do you remember the song? What was it? Oh, that's right. It was the national anthem, I think. I think it was of the United States of America, with President Trump speaking over it, doing the Pledge of Allegiance of the United States of America. I mean, it's like, would you ever support a song like that? Well, yeah, we do support that song. How about you, Adam Schiff?
With a poll, would you say you were fit to be FBI director?
Mr. Schiff, I am fit to be FBI director based on my 16 years of government service.
And yet you did all these things, Mr. Patel. You can say, oh, I support law enforcement. I decry violence against law enforcement. You could say all that.
You know, Adam Schiff woke up this morning, looked in the mirror, and he goes, I've got it. I've got it. I'm going to pull off this stunt. And he's stepping on rakes because Kash Patel turned to him and go, you want me to talk to the cops? How about you talk to the cops? And then you ask them, do they support me for FBI director? Let's see how your little game goes right now. Go ahead. Ask the cops. Go ahead. Go ahead, Adam Schiff. What are you waiting for?
It's what you did, Mr. Patel, that matters. It's what you did that matters.
You did.
Well, let me ask you about something else.
No, you don't get to. Not you. Yeah, this is this was feisty today, and thankfully, I think Kash got feistier after the lunch break. This is in two parts today because it was earlier this morning. He was being very nice to everybody, and then after lunch he came back with he ate his protein, and he came back and he just decided to smack these guys around, which is great. So he was beating up on Adam Schiff today, and the other guy who really found some energy was RFK Jr. Yesterday, he endured all this garbage. He was back for round 2 in the United States Senate today. And he happened to, maybe in the intervening hours, somebody must have shared with RFK Jr. the fact that Bernie Sanders is one of the single largest recipients of pharmaceutical cash in the entire United States Senate. And RFK Jr. deployed that detail against him today. And Bernie's head exploded on national television. So that'll be, I'm excited to share that with you. I've got Tulsi Gabbard audio coming up as Tulsi runs circles around these ghouls among the Democrats in the United States Senate. And hopefully the games will end soon and we can get these guys into their jobs because it turns out there's a lot of important business to get to for the American people. It's ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show. Stay with us. Good afternoon to you. It's 5:35 here at News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. RFK Jr., hopefully set to become the next Secretary of HHS. In for round 2 today before the United States Senate. The Democrats losing their minds again. Here's Ed Markey of Massachusetts today saying, well, scientists say you shouldn't have this job. Here he is.
75 Nobel Prize winners in science have said very clearly that you should not be confirmed, that it would be dangerous for you to have
And you should look at their conflicts, Senator. You should look at their conflicts of those individuals.
Well, 75
and
Nobel...
you should look at who financed that letter.
RFK Jr., the gloves now coming completely off today. Going, you want to talk about conflicts? I'll talk about conflicts with you. How about the guys who were signing this letter and how conflicted and owned they are by the very industries that desperately don't want me to be at the top of this at HHS. RFK Jr. also calling out old Bernie Sanders today, the socialist senator, who was pretending like he's like stay on the side of science and health when in fact he's just on the side of lining his own pockets with campaign contributions. RFK calls him out and Bernie blows a gasket.
I'm going to make America healthier than other countries in the world right now.
Will you guarantee do what every other major country does? It's a simple question.
And by the way, Bernie,
oh, man, disrespectful. Just disrespectful to call him by his first name.
No, the problem of corruption is not just in the federal agencies. It's in Congress, too. Almost all the members of this panel are accepting, including yourself, are accepting millions of dollars from the pharmaceutical industry.
Oh, no,
and protecting their interests.
Oh, I thought that would come. No. I ran for president like you. I got millions and millions of contributions. They did not come from the executives, not one nickel of PAC money from the pharmaceutical industry. They came from workers.
In 2020, you were the single largest
because I had
receiver of pharmaceutical money.
Contributions from workers all over this country. Workers,
you were the
not a nickel from corporate PACs.
You were the single largest acceptor of pharmaceutical dollars.
No, from workers in
1.5 million.
Yeah, out of 200 million. All right, but you have not answered. Last question.
He was even more incoherent than usual as RFK had his number today. Really funny. No. We're not talking about that. We're not. No. Yes. As you're up there, what is he supporting? What is Bernie's position on health? That you need to be forced against your will to get jabs that are not going to make you healthier. That's his position. And cui bono? Who does that help? Who does that assist? Oh, that's right. The pharmaceutical companies. And who gave Bernie money? You see how this circle gets connected? The pharmaceutical companies. Bernie's sitting up there. Oh, no, don't you look at that. No, we'll look at that. Thank you very much. This happened yesterday, too, with Elizabeth Warren, where she pulled the same stunt yesterday with RFK. Why don't you support the vaccines? Why don't you support the vaccines? And RFK is and she goes, and she asked him, she said, will you promise not to sue the pharmaceutical companies anymore? She didn't use those words. But RFK called her out yesterday and goes, wait a second, you're asking me not to sue the pharmaceutical companies? No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. Yeah, it is. You just asked me not to sue the pharmaceutical companies. She thought she was clever. She wanted to take a creative angle because, as an attorney, he was representing clients who were suing the pharmaceutical companies. And as an attorney, he takes a small fee from that. Sometimes a handsome fee, depending on the size of the decision. But of the judgment. But you have heard trying to creatively craft a defense for the pharmaceutical companies going, do you promise that you won't be involved in any lawsuits and make any money off of these pharmaceutical companies? And he goes, wait a second, you're telling me not to sue the pharmaceutical companies. Now, if we go back, as we did yesterday, what is Elizabeth Warren's stake in all this? Oh, well, she's received over $5 million in contributions from the medical industry, including the pharmaceutical companies. And she's up there saying, please don't sue them anymore. Please, you better pledge. What a scam. What a scam. As they claim that he's somehow conflicted. Yeah. Rand Paul, Senator Rand Paul, today went after all the people on that panel who keep pretending like they're there to defend the, quote, science.
The COVID vaccine. If you ask me my opinion, there are reporters run up and down the hall and they say, you still anti-vaccine? No, I'm pro-vaccine. But on the COVID vaccine and on the COVID illness, there was a 1,000-fold or more difference between the elderly and children. If you don't acknowledge that, you're committing malpractice. You're showing your ignorance. If you say a 6-month-old must be mandated to get it, the science is not there. So all this blather about the science says this and the science says that, no, it doesn't. The science actually shows that no healthy child in America died from COVID. Look it up. No healthy child died from COVID.
No healthy child died from COVID. So I think what Rand Paul is saying is he supports the onesies, right? I think he supports the onesies.
Are you supportive of these onesies?
Are you supportive of these onesies, the ones that say that you're not supposed to give the jab to the babies? Yes, says Rand Paul. Yes, I'm very supportive of these onesies. Oh, good for Rand Paul. As usual, Rand Paul, as is typical, he stands up for the actual science, for reason, for acknowledging uncertainty, and not allowing the government to dictate every aspect of your life. In fact, Rand Paul said today, everybody's sitting up here on this panel, they demand that the American people submit to government. And I'm not for that.
These are the nuances you're unwilling to talk about because there's such a belief in submission. Submit to the government. Do what you're told. There is no discussion. There ought to be a debate. You're not going to let him have the debate because you're just going to criticize and say, it is this and admit to it or we're not going to appoint you. But it's more complicated than that. And this is why people distrust government. Because you're unwilling to have these conversations.
Yeah, good for him. Good for Rand Paul. And laying it out so clearly. You're just demanding that everybody submit. And Americans need to be treated like the adults they are. We work for them. That's the reminder from Rand Paul today at that hearing for RFK as RFK calls out their conflicts. I can't like this more. I can't like this more. We should have confirmation hearings every day, probably for less consequential roles, but somewhere where these guys can keep calling out these senators into their faces. Tulsi Gabbard today talking about becoming the Director of National Intelligence. Here are some of her remarks.
I'm honored and grateful to President Trump for his trust and confidence in nominating me to serve our country as the Director of National Intelligence at a time when trust in the intelligence community, unfortunately, is at an all-time low. Chuck Schumer admitted a few years ago, quote, you take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you.
Oh, I can't love her more. I'm so glad she's bringing this up.
For too long, faulty, inadequate, or weaponized intelligence have led to costly failures and the undermining of our national security and God-given freedoms enshrined in the Constitution.
Good for her. And so she went after, she was, it's a question of, like, what are you going to do? Are you going to get up there and you're going to acknowledge the sins of these Democrats, or are you going to, play footsie with them and be like, oh, I would love to earn your vote. I recognize how important the intelligence community is. I just want to earn your vote. Please support me. But no, she didn't hold back. She straight up acknowledged the abuses here.
Here are just a few other examples. The American people elected Donald Trump as their president not once but twice. And yet the FBI and intelligence agencies were politicized by his opponents to undermine his presidency and falsely portray him as a puppet of Putin. Title I of FISA was used illegally to obtain a warrant to spy on Trump campaign advisor Carter Page, using a Clinton campaign-funded false dossier as their so-called evidence. Biden campaign advisor Tony Blinken was the impetus for the 51 former senior intelligence officials' letter dismissing Hunter Biden's laptop as disinformation specifically to help Biden win the election.
Do you think there are any Democrat voters anywhere in the country right now? I'm talking about people who voted in rapid succession for Obama, Hillary, Biden, Kamala. Like, do you think that anybody out there who's watching the raw feed of this, who hears that and thinks to themselves, there's no way that's true? Like, you know what I mean? Like, how could you listen to all of that? The media, so if she was lying, by the way, as she reels off this list, which of course she's not lying, you know she's telling the truth. CNN or MSNBC, they'd be all over it today. Fact check, that's totally false. Tulsi Gabbard, conspiracy theory, nothing. They just pretend like she didn't say any of it. What she is laying out here is a devastating indictment of the corruption of our government. And everyone acts like, well, on the left, acts like she didn't say it. They go full-blown George Orwell on it. They just like a memory hole the entire portion of her speech, or of her opening statement. Don't let people hear this. She's right about this.
Former DNI James Clapper lied to this committee in 2013, denying the existence of programs that...
Tulsi, are you listening right now? I'm all over this. I'm always all over this. The James Clapper lying about spying on the American people directly to the faces of the Congress.
Win the election. Former DNI James Clapper lied to this committee in 2013, denying the existence of programs that facilitated the mass collection of millions of Americans' phone and internet records.
To a Democrat, to Ron Wyden. Not wittingly.
Yet was never held accountable. Under John Brennan's leadership, the CIA abused its power to spy on Congress, to dodge oversight, lied about doing it until he was caught.
That's a deep cut, by the way. A lot of people don't realize that. John Brennan is CIA director. The CIA was spying on the United States Senate. Spying on the Senate, and Brennan was lying to the public about it. Tulsi correct, pointing that out.
And yet has never been held responsible. Under Biden, the FBI abused its power for political reasons to try to surveil Catholics who attend traditional Latin Mass, labeling them as quote-unquote radical traditionalist Catholics. Personally, just 24 hours after I criticized Kamala Harris and her nomination, I was placed on a secret domestic terror watch list called Quiet Skies. Sadly, there are more examples. The bottom line is this must end. This must end.
The Democrats treated her like garbage today, as you might imagine. People like Tom Cotton came to her defense, rightfully so. Senator Cotton pointed out that all of these delusional left-wing attacks miss the fact that Tulsi Gabbard has been subjected to at least 5 full-blown government background checks in order to receive security clearances, and she keeps coming back clean.
I'm dismayed by the attacks on Ms. Gabbard's patriotism and her loyalty to our country. For instance, Hillary Clinton has smeared Ms. Gabbard, calling her an asset of a foreign nation. Let me remind everyone that Ms. Gabbard has served in our Army for more than 2 decades. She has multiple combat tours, and she still wears the uniform to this day. She has undergone 5 FBI background checks. I spent more than 2 hours last week reviewing the latest, putting eyes on more than 300 pages. It's clean as a whistle.
You know, one of the things that the left has tried to smear Tulsi Gabbard with is at one point she had gone to Syria on a fact-finding mission, and in the process was able to meet with the Syrian leader at the time, Bashar al-Assad. And just to be clear, Nancy Pelosi has literally made the same journey, but she still serves in Congress, and everyone acts like that's totally normal. But Tulsi Gabbard did this, and they're saying, "Oh, you must be on Assad's side. You must be on Assad's side." And Tulsi, ever since then, was like, "No, I'm literally trying to get to the bottom of how we can bring some peace to the region and make things safer for America. She talked a little bit about this idea that people accuse her of being a puppet of foreign powers.
The fact is, what truly unsettles my political opponents is I refuse to be their puppet. I have no love for Assad or Gaddafi or any dictator. I just hate al-Qaeda.
I just hate al-Qaeda. And then she points out, now we have Islamist extremists running Syria in the wake of the fall of Assad. So how is that working out for everybody? Al-Qaeda affiliates running. So great plan, everyone. Way to go. Way to go. Tulsi says that she shed no tears whatsoever for the fall of the Assad regime. But you do have to have eyes open as to what's happening and the impact it has on us.
I shed no tears for the fall of the Assad regime. But today we have an Islamist extremist who is now in charge of Syria, as I said, who danced on the streets to celebrate the 9/11 attack, who ruled over Idlib with an Islamist extremist governance, and who has already begun to persecute and kill and arrest religious minorities like Christians in Syria.
I understand.
Why that should be acceptable to anyone is beyond me.
It shouldn't
is
be.
certainly
And I
not in our
understand, and
interests.
I
Yeah, good for her. I mean, and she's pointing out that the United States has a long history of terrible decisions when it comes to regime change. We create these power vacuums into which chaos arrives, you know? And we're still drunk on this idea that we nuked Japan into compliance, and then after that, ever since, we keep trying to do regime changes everywhere else, and it hasn't exactly been working, you know? So Tulsi points out that, okay, yeah, Assad's a bad guy. He's a war criminal. What replaces him? Is anybody thinking this through? Is there any plans? So in other words, might she be the right kind of person to lead the intelligence community? Yeah, that's a lot more intelligence than Washington's produced in a long time. The mass deportations continue. Tom Homan and company rounding up violent illegals in particular, but illegal aliens broadly as they encounter them, ejecting them from the country. President Trump said yesterday that he's opening up Guantanamo Bay now to at least 30,000 illegals, violent illegals, that he's concerned their home countries may let them loose again. He doesn't want to take the risk. So 30,000 beds, he said, are now rapidly opening up at Guantanamo to hold them. That'll be a big deterrent for people who might want to come into the country illegally. That number's dropping dramatically. A reporter was in Chicago speaking to the mayor there, Brandon Johnson, and asking him about all of this and saying, hey, wait a second. You know, Tom Homan just arrived in Chicago and in no time was finding criminals who are convicted sex offenders, illegals. Why haven't you been doing that?
Tom Homan showed up in Chicago and within 24 hours found a convicted sex offender who has been living in our city since 2009, flouting the sex offender registry. If he can do this, why can't you?
Because that's their job. That is their job. The federal government
job's not to keep
has
the
a
people of Chicago
responsibility
safe.
to make sure that individuals who are undocumented, who have been charged with, convicted of a crime.
Well, if they've been charged and convicted, they're not undocumented, are they?
Federal government's responsibility to do their part and uphold the law. Our local police department, along with our public health department, along with our other sister agencies, are working to build a better, stronger, safer Chicago.
Oh, shut up.
And as we've stated repeatedly, those critical investments, you continue to see the results of those investments as violent crime continues to fall in Chicago.
You can hear how bewildered the reporter is. He says, wait a second, it's not your job to keep Chicago safe? And unfortunately, the answer is look around. He's not interested in that. That's not anywhere near the top of his priorities list. The mayor of Chicago now, Brandon Johnson. They're just all awful. How many awful Chicago mayors can you have back to back? Chicago voters need to do so much better. We can do great for you right now. The great one, Mark Levin, up next here on WMAL.